Hey everyone, it's Justine and welcome to the last day of watercolor for the non-artistic card maker. Today we're focusing on easy coloring with watercolors or watercolor mediums, and I have two videos for you today, so don't forget to check out the other one. There are PDF file downloads, supply lists to look at, extra pictures, as well as a link up where you can link your own projects for prizes over on my blog, so be sure to check that out. It's in the description below. So to get started, I am going to be creating this adorable card featuring my favorite things, adorable elephants, stamp set. And this card was released last month, and I absolutely had to have it because it's just so adorable, and I love little elephants. It's one of my favorite animals to stamp and color. So to begin with, I thought I would do a compare and contrast originally with line coloring and no line coloring. Line coloring is simply I would ink up the image in standard black ink, archival ink, and watercolor, and then the other one I would ink in a very, very light ink that you wouldn't be able to see afterwards, and do it and watercolor that as well. Unfortunately, my attempt at no line watercoloring was disastrous, and since the theme this week is easy coloring, I thought I would skip that step. So to get started, I'm going to stamp this in archival ink. You need archival ink because it's waterproof. And I'm going to stamp this in the bottom left-hand corner of a landscape piece of watercolor paper, which measures 4 by 5¼ inches. This adorable elephant here, we're going to color in using some watercolor Gansai watercolor paints. But before I do that, I wanted to add a couple little butterflies to the scene, just to add a little bit of extra something to the card. I apologize that the camera currently is slightly out of focus, but it will improve in just a minute. So I'm getting those 3 butterflies on there. I just wanted to create that because I'm going to do some grass as well as a sky later on, so I wanted to create sort of more of a scene looking card. So to watercolor this, I'm actually only going to use 2 colors. I'm using the black in the watercolor, or as well as the pink. I put it down on my craft mat because I wanted to add lots of water to saturate that color so I could get some different shades of gray out of it, because there aren't a lot of shades of gray in this pack. So I just lightening up the black and it works just fine. So I'm putting a layer down, kind of dabbing where there's too much ink or too much color. And I'm going to go in a little bit with the pink here and sort of dab it so that it's lighter. I just kept adding layer after layer. In order to add effective layers, you should dry it in between each layer. I did let it dry in between certain layers. So I colored kind of the whole thing, let it dry for a couple minutes, and then I went back in and did my layers, just because I found that building up the color on wet cardstock didn't really have much of an effect. And I just kept darkening certain areas and lightening certain areas with the paper towel. I wasn't using any sort of rhyme or reason for this. I just kind of did it as I went. Like I said, you could just try it with a small paintbrush. Put down a layer and then just add sort of more color where you think there would be shadows, and that will probably be quite successful for you. The key is the amount of water. I have a lot of water down on my craft mat, but I tried to wipe off my brush a little bit between each use because I didn't want too much water on it, because the water just makes it bleed out of the lines. So I had to be really careful with that. And then I just kept dumping my paintbrush into just clean water every once in a while and spreading out more and more color. So I was really happy with the actual outcome of this card. Even though there weren't a lot of deep layering shadows, I really did like it. Now that my card is completely dry, I'm going to go in and add some grass and some sky. The thing is, and the trick to this is to go slowly, because you don't want to get into the image at all, because the watercolors will still react if they touch water. So I'm kind of going along the edge of this here, trying my best to stay below that black line or on the black line instead of trying to get into the gray, because it will mix then with the green. So you have to be careful, and this must be completely dry at this point. So I just added a little bit of grass, touched it up here and there with some paper towel. And I'm not doing anything really special at this point to do grass. I'm not doing any sort of grass lines or anything like that. It's just, you're going to get the point once it's done. At this point, I'm going to do the same thing for the sky. Again, just being careful not to touch the elephant, making sure my layers are completely dry. I didn't make sure the grass was dry, I noticed, and when I went near the grass, the 2 colors did sort of blend together just slightly. It was pretty subtle though, so I didn't actually mind. So I put sort of a darker layer along the elephant, grabbed some water and kind of blended outwards. That I found was the most useful. And then I just kept going in with clean water and blending it out to the edge so that it eventually faded off into the cardstock. When I was finished watering, I wanted to add a little bit of texture to this paper, so I decided to cut down my card panel with a stitched rectangle die from Simon Says Stamp. I decided to just put a stitching around the edge of this card because I thought it would look really cute on the actual paper and just give it a little more of a finished look as far as the card panel goes. And then I decided to put on a card base. I'm using some cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I really like this light blue color here because it really just goes with so many cards when you're creating an outdoor scene, I find, and lots of critters and things like that. I just find the cardstock really pretty with it. So I'm just going to glue this panel onto the back of the card. Actually, I'm going to use some 3D foam tape. I tend to find that if I glue directly onto the cardstock and my cardstock is slightly warped, it eventually warps my card base as well. So I do like to attach things using 3D foam tape more. It just gives a little bit of space between the warped watercolor and the cardstock itself. So that's the end of my card tutorial today. I hope you enjoyed this card featuring my favorite things, adorable elephants on the easy images, and that you'll check out my blog. All the supplies used in this video are linked to below in the video description, as well as on my blog. On my blog, there's links to the stores. Click here to visit my blog or supply list. Up at the top, you can click the subscribe button on the right to subscribe to my channel, or click on the video that's moving right now to check out yesterday's video. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.